It's another gorgeous day on the water just off the coast of Hoopers Island in Dorchester County. Ricky Fitzhugh and his business partner Johnny Shockley are headed to the 5 acres they lease on the Chesapeake Bay. They own Hoopers Island Aquaculture. It's a farm on the water. Their crop, oysters, will be sold across the country and as far away as Hong Kong.
Right now we have about 800 cages of oysters here. As the oysters grow, we start out with about 10,000 per cage, and we end up with about 1,500 that grow out. We have to continually split them out as they grow so that they continually got room to get bigger and bigger as they go.
During the spring, the busiest time of the year, they harvest about 17,000 oysters a day. Each one is processed right on the boat.
The tumbler that we're using here today is mainly meant to just clean the silt and wash the oyster off.
The mouth-watering mollusks are sorted by size. That will determine how they're marketed. Employees use UV lights on the oysters to kill any bacteria. They reach their destination the very next day.
We go out and get whatever is ordered for that day, bring it in so we're not like keeping product, holding it over for 2 or 3 days.
Johnny and Ricky have things down to a science, but it's a science based in history. Back in the 1880s, there were enough oysters to filter the Chesapeake Bay once every 3 days, and enough to supply 1/2 of the world's yearly demand. They were prized enough to start the Oyster Wars, a violent turf war fought on the water by pirates, watermen, and authorities from Maryland and Virginia. The battles lasted from the 1880s through the late 1950s. Around that same time, overfishing, pollution, and disease started to send the oyster population plunging. It's now less than 1% of what it once was. More Chesapeake oysters, whether they're wild or grown in cages, can help make the bay cleaner for everyone.
Had we been able to sustain our production at the late 1800s and into the early 1900s, this industry would rival the orange industry of Central Florida or the coal mine industry of West Virginia. With oyster aquaculture, I see that potential.
The history of the Maryland oyster industry is part of Johnny's personal history. He's a lifelong waterman, following in the footsteps of his father, who also spent most of his life as a traditional Chesapeake Bay waterman. Together, father and son made the shift from fishing to growing.
I saw the economic possibilities here, but yet I still had that water running through my veins. So I just wanted to stay with my way of life.
Johnny's son Jordan works with them. He's a marine biologist specializing in larvae, growing algae, and how oysters spawn.
They're pretty hard to see in the water column with the naked eye. And when we get them in 3 million bundles, which is about the size of a golf ball. So they're not very big.
The larvae float around for a while before they attach to tiny pieces of ground-up oyster shell.
After they attach to the shell, they'll begin laying down their own shell of calcium carbonate. They filter that from the water and actually lay that down. So they're not like a snail where they find their own shell, they actually produce their own shell.
As the oysters grow, they move on to bigger tanks in the nursery.
So what you see here is this is about 1 millimeter to 2 millimeter seed. That's probably about 2 to 3 weeks old in our system. As we move down, we get a little bit bigger, probably anywhere from 2 to 4 millimeter seed.
You heard right. Tiny oysters are called seed. Pretty appropriate for a farm on the water. When it's warm enough, the whole process happens outside. In the winter months, things move inside. No matter what, when they're a little bigger than 1/2 inch, they move out to the bay in cages. These oysters are sterile, which means they don't waste precious energy spawning. Instead, they keep growing.
Well, I think some of the benefits for oyster aquaculture is just the availability of year-round. You know, it's a sustainable product. The meat quality doesn't change.
That means there's year-round demand and always plenty of harvesting, shucking, and packing to be done. Here on Hoopers Island, where oysters are both a heritage and now a future.